may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, please listen to this announcement. So right now I am moving from Austin to Tampa. And what that's going to mean is while usually I know everybody's used to me responding to Patreon DMs, to me getting out your team breakdown podcast within hours. Well, no, it's going to take me a little bit longer. This is going to be the first day in I don't know how long that we probably don't check Patreon until the very end of the night. So if I go 12, 13 hours without responding to your DM, please understand that the next few days for me, they're going to be crazy. I mean, you're also going to find that I may not have the chance to premiere these videos. I may not have the chance to actually hang out in the live chat. But please, I mean, tell me what you think down in the comment section below, because I'm going to be stuck in a car. So I'm just going to be reading the YouTube comments over and over and over again, replying to them. So yeah, leave your comments down below and subscribe to the channel. Drop a like if you have not for whatever reason, but I'm sure everybody has done that. And let's talk about a running back here that I think is a fantastic value in drafts this offseason. And now last offseason, he was going significantly higher, but his situation has gotten better. I mean, his situation has gotten better. His price has decreased, and this is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So the first thing I want to do with CEH is I want to kind of go through the overall prospect profile that he had, talk about his rookie season, break it down into pieces, and really have a good understanding of what actually happened. But at the end of the video, I think that's going to be by far and away the most important part. So please make sure you stick to the end, where I'm going to be looking historically at what has actually happened with top passing offenses and how much value it's led to the running back position. So please stick till the end, because it's going to be very important here with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And yeah, let's just dive into him. And this is a running back that as a rookie last offseason, if y'all remember, I mean, after Damian Williams opted out due to COVID, all of a sudden, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in high stakes redraft leagues was going at the very latest, the 106. I mean, this was a rookie that was being drafted higher than where Ezekiel Elliott was being drafted his rookie season. He was being drafted higher than where Saquon Barkley was being drafted his rookie season. And the explanation was simple. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a profile of a rookie running back that was going to come in and automatically be playing on all three downs in the most important offense in the entire NFL. We know everybody's trying to get a piece of that Kansas City Chiefs offense. So if you were able to get their 3-down running back in the first round, after we saw Kareem Hunt, his rookie season, be a top 5 running back in fantasy, everybody was drooling at the idea of going and getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Kansas City. Well, it didn't necessarily work out. And now Clyde Edwards-Helaire has fallen from being a mid-first round pick as a rookie to now you're getting him in the late second sometimes. I mean, it's going to depend on your league, but if you're playing in a high stakes redraft format, I mean, the majority of the time you're going to be having to take Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the middle of the second round. But if you're just playing in a league with your buddies, if you're just playing in a casual league, I mean, you could actually get CEH at the end of the third and potentially, I'm sorry, not the end of the third, the end of the second and potentially the beginning of the third. And here, if we take a step back and if we try to remember the kind of prospect that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was coming into the NFL, I mean, he was a specialized pass catching running back where you looked at him at LSU, and this is someone that had over 200 rushing attempts. So we know that he can be a high volume player, but more importantly, this is a player that had 66 targets and 55 receptions his final year at LSU. Now, keep in mind, this was with Joe Burrow. This was with Jamar Chase. This was with Justin Jefferson, Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator. So there were a ton of different variables playing into the fact that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was able to be one of the most impressive running backs in college football. He was playing on the best offense in college football. But, I mean, guys, he's playing on the best offense in the NFL as well. So I think that you can't necessarily take everything away from him. And a big thing is, I mean, he was able to go out there and command over 10% of the team's targets for this LSU Tigers team. And this was a roster with, we already said, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. They had so many solid options, yet Joe Burrow continued to look to check the ball down to Clyde Edwards-Helaire very often coming out of the backfield. And now a big thing that we look at with running back prospects beyond just their receiving down capability, because of course there's way more that goes into it, is actually going to be the speed of the running back, going to be the team investment indicating the opportunity that they should have at the NFL level, as well as their BMI. And let's stick it with BMI real quick, because this is going to be very important for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Because y'all know that running back size 100% matters with what you're going to be finding in terms of how many touches they can see on a per game basis. Well, a lot of people just want to look at the overall weight for a running back and assume that directly translates to how many touches they can handle. Well, that's not what you should be doing. What you should actually be doing is looking at the BMI of the running back, because that gives you a much better idea of the actual build of the running back, if he's going to be a thicker guy, slider guy. And here, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a BMI that is over 32. So this is a BMI that is in the 90th percentile of all running backs in the NFL. And yes, he's only 5'7", but 207 pounds. So CEH, he's a running back that I think can easily handle usage on all three downs. We already saw it at LSU. Now, the speed is a little bit of a question. He ran a 4.60 40-yard dash, and it's really funny because if you read our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, where we did the historical research in trying to find what matters with the 40-yard dash for fantasy production, and we found at wide receiver, it really didn't matter at all. But at running back, it definitely mattered, in the minimum threshold that you needed to potentially be a running back one in fantasy historically has been a 4.60 40-yard dash, which CEH is barely at. So of course it's not a positive sign, but at least it's not a major red flag. And despite this great profile, despite him going to the league's best offense, I mean, he was a major disappointment his rookie season. We already talked about this, but I really want to dive into the exact numbers with what we found from Clyde Edwards-Helaire and what exactly was disappointing from it. So he did end up finishing as a low-end running back 2 in fantasy with 24 in terms of his standings and points per game, and he averaged 13.54 points per game. And he got targets, he got usage in the red zone, which are both definitely what you want to be seeing. We've already done the analysis showing exactly why it's so important that your running backs in PPR leagues are coming away with targets and coming away with red zone rushes. I mean, that is directly translated to fantasy production compared to just raw touches overall. So you love to see both of those marks for a 21-year-old rookie in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, what we need to know is how he looked with and without Le'Veon Bell. Because obviously this team goes out, they get Le'Veon Bell halfway through the year. And I'm going to be completely honest. I think wanted to overlook the Le'Veon Bell addition to this offense. I wanted to say that Le'Veon Bell was dust, that it was just a depth play, that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was still going to be a running back 1 in fantasy. And maybe I was just a little biased in that with how high we were on Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a buy low candidate, because I didn't necessarily love drafting him in the first round last year, but whenever his value dipped, I was all about going and trying to get him. And that was the wrong call. And I'm going to be 100% transparent by that, because he made multiple buy low videos last year. And if we just look at the two different splits with and without Le'Veon Bell, I mean, without Le'Veon Bell, Clyde Edwards-Helaire actually averaged almost 16 points per game, and he would have been the running back 12 in fantasy based on those numbers with what he did not have with Le'Veon Bell. So while yes, he maybe would have still been disappointing, we have to keep in mind it was the first 6 weeks of his NFL career. He really didn't even get a chance to ramp up. I mean, if we go through the first 6 weeks, and we've already seen that if he kept that pace, he would have finished as the running back 12 on a points per game basis. And if we compare this to the other rookie running backs last year, I mean, their first 6 weeks, they started off way slower than Clyde Edwards-Helaire did. I mean, Jonathan Taylor was the running back 22 on a points per game basis during that stretch. Cam Akers, the running back 83. DeAndre Swift, the running back 24. And J.K. Dobbins, the running back 48. All those guys that were still at the top of drafts, still those top-end rookies. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a significantly better start to last season than any of them did. Now, yes, a lot of them, including Jonathan Taylor and Cam Akers, finished stronger than CEH. That was mainly due to the fact that Le'Veon Bell came in. It completely killed Clyde Edwards-Helaire's value, while all those other running backs got to see an increase in opportunity in their respective offenses. I mean, Bell came in, and this dropped Clyde Edwards-Helaire to 11.5 points a game, and he would have been the running back 30 during that stretch. So he goes from being a low-end running back 1 to being a mid running back 3 with the addition of Le'Veon Bell. And this is not to say that the low-end running back 1 is his ceiling, because we already saw that other running backs that were not necessarily living up to his expectations at the beginning of the year, they finished as running back 1s to end it, just because we know those rookies are going to get better as the season goes on. Now, why I'm saying that this situation is so much better for Clyde Edwards-Helaire is really twofold. I mean, you have Damian Williams going to Chicago. He did not play last year, but he opted out, and you had to be a little bit concerned about him coming back this season. But nope, that's not a concern anymore. He's in Chicago. And B, Le'Veon Bell, not with this team. Le'Veon Bell is gone. So if you look at the depth chart right now, I mean, you actually have Darrell Williams, Jerick McKinnon, and Darwin Thompson really as the only other running backs. Darwin Thompson really has not been able to even get on the field through his NFL career. That's a player you don't need to be worried about at all. Jerick McKinnon was a healthy scratch 90% of the games for the 49ers last year just to rest his knees. They were saying his knees couldn't handle football. So why are we thinking that he's going to be able to come in and take any touches away if he's a healthy scratch for a 49ers team that had an injured Raheem Mostert the entire season? They desperately needed running back play, and Jerick McKinnon just simply does not have the health to be able to be an impact player. Now, Darrell Williams, on the other hand, this is someone that I've actually been drafting a lot at the very end of drafts. I mean, if you're seeing me in mock drafts, if you saw me in the high stakes $1,000 Patreon flock draft, I mean, you know, I'm taking Darrell Williams. And that's because this is someone that, while yes, he's undrafted and he's 26 years old, he is really not talented in the slightest. What we do know is we know that this is a player that at the end of the day, you could be seeing him step into a 3-down role on this Chiefs offense if something happened to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because there is nobody else in this backfield. And what this depth chart is telling us is it's telling us that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is such a safe option to be a 3-down running back in the best offense in football. And I know a lot of people are going to be saying, but Mason, I mean, are we sure that the Kansas City Chiefs are even a good situation to be in for a 3-down running back? Well, guys, I know last year it was kind of whatever with the Chiefs, but we have to understand that the number one weakness that Chiefs roster had was their offensive line. And nothing dictates running back efficiency like offensive line play. And the Chiefs, you could make the argument it was either them or the Chargers have the most improved offensive line coming into this season. They sign Joe Thuney from the New England Patriots to the largest contract that you see ever for a left guard, really. I mean, he gets $32 million. They go out there, yes, they release Eric Fisher, they release Mitchell Schwartz, but neither one of those players were guys that were going to make an impact this upcoming season. They trade a first-round pick for stud tackle Orlando Brown from the Baltimore Ravens, who really didn't want to have to go through the pain of paying the man. And they also convinced Kyle Long to come out of retirement. So this is an offensive line that is a million times better than they were last season. And we go through and we just try to, I mean, one bad thing about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, at least a lot of fantasy owners think that this is one bad thing, is the fact that, quote unquote, the Chiefs do not want to run the ball. The Chiefs aren't going to run. It's just pass, 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 and a running back can't be productive here. Well, you know what's really funny is if we look at the amount of rushing attempts that you had from an NFL offense last year, and you remove the rushing attempts for the quarterback position, because it's so annoying when people come to the comment section and go, well, Mason, the Baltimore Ravens are going to lead the NFL in rushing, and it isn't going to be close. Look at the attempts. What does that mean for J.K. Dobbins? And I'm saying, well, take out Lamar Jackson. Take out Lamar Jackson and tell me what that team does with rushing. People really have a hard time understanding how the quarterback plays into those numbers. Now, if we go through and we take out the quarterback position, the Chiefs were actually 14th in rushing yards last year, which is 100% significant because it shows us that the Chiefs are going to be average in terms of the rushing volume with a very bad offensive line. Keep that in mind. That's with the horrendous offensive line. Now, I understand that the Chiefs did not have a lot of rushing touchdowns last year. But if you watch the games, if you look at the stats, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had over 2 red zone rush attempts a game, which is perfectly fine for a running back trying to access some touchdown upside. And now a big thing is we know that touchdowns are the most volatile statistic when it comes to fantasy football. It's easy to translate targets. It's easy to translate carries and yards season to season, but touchdowns are volatile. I mean, they'll go up and down. It's almost like a sine wave. And what I want to be doing is I want to take a step back and I want to go, okay, so we know the Chiefs aren't going to be one of the most run-happy offenses in the NFL, but we know they're going to be a top 3 passing offense regardless. So let's look back in recent history and let's look at the amount of rushing touchdowns that top 3 passing offenses have had over the past 5 or 6 years. Now, this is important because, like I said, the Chiefs did not score the ball a lot on the ground last year. But I want to try to look at this through a macro sense and see if we think this can change, because that would unlock Clyde Edwards-Helaire as an elite fantasy asset. So if we go through and we look since 2015, I mean, I don't know if we should go through the teams. We'll do it real fast just so you can fact check me if you don't believe me on this. But 2020, the top 3 passing offenses were the Chiefs, the Bucks, the Bills. 2019, the Bucks, the Cowboys, the Falcons. 2018, the Bucks, Steelers, Chiefs. 2017, Chargers, Pats, Steelers. 2016, Saints, Redskins, Falcons. 2015, Saints, Cardinals, Steelers. Okay, so those were the top passing offenses in the NFL. Now, what we did is we went and we tracked where they finished in total rushing touchdowns on the season compared to all other teams. Now, a big thing that would have made this study significantly better, because y'all know I'm all about transparency, is if we could have gone through and removed all rushing touchdowns from the quarterback position and purely just looked at rushing touchdowns from the running back position. Because a big thing here is, I know this honestly probably makes our data look a little bit worse, but if we were able to find data that would have showed us just rushing touchdowns from the running back backfield compared to the quarterback thrown in, I mean, we would have been looking at even better numbers for the amount of rushing touchdowns that they are going to see compared to the rest of the field. Because we know that those mobile quarterbacks, those guys like a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, they're going to be racking up a ton of rushing touchdowns that aren't going to be going to the running back position, and their offenses usually aren't going to be near the top of the league in passing volume. If you have an offense in the top of the league with passing volume, you most likely have a stationary pocket passing quarterback. So if you're getting rushing touchdowns, they're all coming from the running back position. So keep in mind that our numbers probably don't even show the full story. But if we go through and if we take all those teams with where they finished in the standings in their rushing touchdowns at the end of the season, and we're not going to look at averages because we know averages on the extreme. I mean, if you have a team that finishes first or if you have a team that finishes 31st, I mean, it's definitely going to skew the sample. So instead, if you know anything about statistics, I think with a study like this, it's going to be a lot more impactful to look at the median. So the median finish for a team that had a top 3 passing offense was 9th in rushing touchdowns that season. I think it would be a little bit higher if we could remove quarterback rushing touchdowns, but we simply didn't have access to that data. So this tells us that the Chiefs, if they're going to be a top 3 passing offense again, at the very least, you should expect them to be average with the amount of rushing touchdowns that they're going to have. They have upside for definitely a lot more than that, given the improvements on offensive line. So we're looking at all of this going into it. We're going, okay, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he was a running back 1 with no Le'Veon Bell last year. He was a running back that got unlucky with his touchdown volume. Now he is seeing a significant upgrade to his offensive line, and he's only 22 years old. So CEH, I mean, if you can get him in a casual format at the end of the 2nd round, the beginning of the 3rd round, that's a smash pick. I mean, you really shouldn't even be thinking about it because he's a feature down running back on the best offense in football. But thank you, my dudes, for coming out here, supporting the channel. And like I said, if you shoot me a DM on Patreon, I mean, don't hesitate to DM me on Patreon. I'm going to get back to you as soon as I can, but it may just be a little bit longer than usual. And thank you for understanding, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. We've gotten a ton of new members joining the flock. Thank you, Grind for Gold, Devin, Bungified, Brian, Brody, Victor, Chris, Grant, Trevor, and David. Thank you, my dudes.